There is a sentence in Philippine sports history that has never been written before this week, in any sport, by any athlete, male or female. The second week of a Grand Slam. Not because nobody tried, because for the entire open era of tennis, over 50 years, nobody from a country of 117 million people ever got that far. Until Saturday. Let's establish exactly how far never actually goes. Because the number is bigger than most casual fans realize, and it's the number that makes everything else in this video make sense. 74 years ago, in the amateur era, a 5'1" Filipino named Felicissimo Ampon reached the third round of Roland Garros. That was it. That was the high water mark. Since then, decades of silence. Not a third round, not a fourth round, not a single Grand Slam campaign from this country that got remotely close to a second week, at any major, on any surface, by anyone, for 3/4 of a century. Alex Eala just did both. Third round, then fourth round, in the same tournament, in 4 days. The record that stood since before her own parents were born didn't just get matched, it got lapped. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you if you've only been following her career loosely instead of closely. In January of this year, at the Australian Open, Eala walked onto Kia Arena and lost the first set of her opening match 6-0, the wrong way. She lost the match, her third first-round exit at a major in her career. If you had shown that scoreline to a neutral tennis analyst in January and asked them to predict where she'd be in July, first Filipino ever into the second week of Wimbledon would not have been on the list. It wouldn't have been on anyone's list. And yet, even in that same January, something strange was already happening that the scoreline didn't capture. Her press conference in Melbourne, before she had won a single match, pulled 71,000 views on YouTube. The world number one's press conference that same week pulled 9,000. An unseeded, first-round loser was outdrawing the best player alive online, months before any of this. The tennis establishment had her filed as a talented, likable prospect with a ceiling somewhere in the high 30s. The audience had already filed her somewhere else entirely. That gap, between what the rankings said and what the crowds already believed, is the honest antagonist running underneath this entire story. Not a rival, not a specific opponent, but a quiet question the sport had been asking politely for 2 years. Could she actually close matches at the biggest stage, or was she a player who shone brightest in smaller rooms, in front of crowds who'd already made up their minds about her regardless of the score? Saturday answered it in the loudest possible way. Defending champion Iga Swiatek, 6 Grand Slam titles. The woman who beat Amanda Anisimova 6-0, 6-0 in last year's Wimbledon final, walked onto center court as a heavy favorite. She left it having lost her title defense in straight sets, 7-6-9, 6-2, to the 29th seed. Eala saved 2 set points in the tiebreak to get there. 1 point differently played. And this video does not exist. She converted 5 of 7 break points. Swiatek converted 3 of 11. That gap, under the exact pressure that has ended her Grand Slam runs before, is the actual answer to the question the sport had been quietly asking about her for 2 years. Now here's where this stops being about one match and starts being about something the entire country is now attached to. When Eala walked off court, unable to finish her own sentence through tears, she wasn't just processing a win. She said that for someone like Swiatek, or Serena, or Venus, a result like this might look small next to a wall of trophies, but for a girl who trained after school with her brother and grandfather, in ruffled socks and light-up shoes, this is everything. That sentence traveled further and faster in the Philippines than the scoreline did. Manny Pacquiao, a name that means more to Filipino sports than almost any other human being alive, publicly said he was proud of her. Not a press release, not a sponsored post. A boxing legend, in a country where boxing has always been the sport that mattered most, reacting to a tennis result like it belonged to him too. Venus Williams, Eala's own doubles partner from earlier this season, called it exactly what it was, making history. When a 5-time Wimbledon champion who chose to play alongside you says that, it isn't a courtesy tweet. It's a peer, confirming what the rest of the sport was only starting to admit. That is the moment a tennis story stops being a tennis story. Zoom out one more time. because the next round changes the entire shape of the stakes, and it's worth understanding exactly who's standing across the net this time. Jasmine Paolini is not a shaky champion having an off day. She's the 13th seed, a Wimbledon finalist last year, a Roland Garros finalist the year before that, a player who has been exactly where Eala is trying to go, more than once, and knows precisely what it costs to get further. This is where the sport's remaining doubt actually lives. Świątek was a champion who cracked under pressure on a surface that historically hasn't rewarded her the way clay does. Paolini is a grass-court proven competitor with nothing structurally working against her the way it was working against Świątek that day. If Eala wins this one, there's no asterisk left to attach to the run. No, she caught a champion on an off day. No, it was a fluke set. If she loses, the run still rewrites the record books permanently. But the conversation shifts overnight, from "how far can this go?" to "how do we build on this next time?" Either way, something that was true on Friday is no longer true on Saturday. Nobody can call this a feel-good story with a ceiling anymore. The ceiling just moved, and as of this recording, it's still moving. It's also worth remembering the structure underneath all of this, because it didn't happen by accident. Eala has trained at the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca since she was 13. The academy publicly framed her Wimbledon debut as a story worth telling before she had won a single match there. When she won 2, then 3, then 4, the framing didn't need adjusting. It just aged well. That's what real, quiet development looks like from the inside. The people closest to a player are usually the least surprised by the moment everyone else calls sudden. And behind all of it sits the number that started this video: 74 years. An entire country waited 3/4 of a century for a second week at a Grand Slam. It got a third round and a fourth round from the same player, 4 days apart, on the same lawn where the previous champion just lost her crown. So here's the question worth arguing about before the next match starts. Does the girl who trained after school with her brother and grandfather, in ruffled socks and light-up shoes, become the first Filipino Grand Slam quarter-finalist in history? Or does the biggest week of her career end one round short of the record books, against the one opponent in this draw, with no structural weakness to exploit? Drop your prediction now, before the result exists, because I want to come back to this exact comment section either way. Subscribe and turn on notifications. This channel is tracking every point of this run, from a 74-year silence to whatever center court has left to right next.